Welcome to Middle Age Can Be Your Best Age, the show designed to help make middle age your prime time of life by defying the notion that once you reach 40, 50, or even 60 years old, your crowning achievements are all behind you. Regardless of whether you're just approaching 40 or firmly entrenched in your middle years, it's time to launch your very own personal journey toward a joyful and purpose-filled second half of life. Each week, host Roy Richards, an expert on midlife renewal and author of A Midlife Challenge, Wake Up, will discuss the challenges common to middle age and help guide you to a brighter tomorrow. Now, here's Roy.
During this segment, we're going to talk about a subject I guarantee approximately half of you never have or never will experience, because I'm talking about all you men, because today's topic is female sexual dysfunction, a condition that my guest, Dr. Marsha K, MD, labels the silent epidemic. But guys, please don't hang up. Most of us have a wife, fiance, life partner, special girlfriend, at least one special lady in our lives, and we can all agree that female dysfunction can put a damper on the enjoyment of being together, man and woman, and over time can seriously harm a relationship. And here are a couple of surprising facts. First, Dr. Guest informs that sexual dysfunction is often linked to a decline in overall female health. And second, it's shocking just how pervasive female sexual dysfunction is. Hard to believe, but here in the U.S., it affects about 50% of all women over 18 years old. And today we're going to talk about causes and treatment options. And Dr. Marsha K is an acclaimed urogynecologist who has been featured as one of U.S. News and World Report's top doctors. She's appeared on the Today Show and has had research highlighted in the New York Times. And along with her colleague, Dr. Kathleen Connell, she's conducted and published a research on this silent epidemic. I'm having trouble talking today. Dubbed silent because patients often don't tell their doctors, and doctors don't typically ask. Nobody likes to talk about it, do they? And Dr. Guest opens the door to helping folks understand the issue, treatment options, and how sexual dysfunction so often is linked to a decline in overall health. And welcome, Dr. Guest, to Middle Age Can Be Your Best Age. It's indeed an honor to have you with us today.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I know the term can encompass a very broad spectrum of conditions, but to begin our discussion, can you give us a general definition of what you mean by the term female sexual dysfunction? What does it include?
When you're talking about sexual dysfunction in females, there's different aspects of sexual function that can be altered. So for some women, it's the desire to have intercourse. For some women, it's becoming aroused and having the physical features of arousal.
Yeah.
For some women, it's not having an orgasm. And for some, they can have actually pain with intercourse.
Wow. Yeah, that's a number of broad range of possible problems.
And some of them overlap, and sometimes you have a combination. But overall, it can just be lacking any of the various sort of normalcies of sexual function.
Yeah, that makes it pretty clear. Well, do researchers know the exact cause of female sexual dysfunction? Or if not, are there any clues to what brings it on?
So the exact cause is not known, and there are some studies, including our study, that are trying to look into this and understand the underpinnings of why women have these problems. Some of the prevailing sort of theories are that there's an alteration in blood flow or the nerves that may be contributing to this. And we actually published a study a while back that showed that women with sexual dysfunction had decreased sensation in the genital region. And some other investigators have also shown decreased blood flow to the area. So we think it's just a combination of things happening. There's potentially some things happening in the brain that may trigger the desire and arousal functions as well. But currently, we have the most information on the blood flow and the neurological components.
Oh, I see. Well, I noticed you tell us that 1 of 4 women suffers from pelvic floor disorders. What are these disorders, and how do they impact a woman's sexual functions?
So that's a fantastic question. I'm actually a urogynecologist, and it's a long word that just means we deal with women with pelvic floor disorders. When we're talking about those, we're talking about urinary incontinence or leaking on yourself or leaking in your underwear, pelvic organ prolapse, when the pelvic organs can actually drop out of their normal position and start falling down, and fecal incontinence, when women have actually, stooling on themselves or passing gas too frequently. So those conditions, 1 in 4 women have actually reported having those symptoms, and unfortunately, most of those women aren't presenting to their doctors, and that's what the problem is. We're not getting the word out, so people aren't talking about it.
Well, what prompted you and your colleague, Dr. Kathleen Connell, to initiate your study on female sexual dysfunction?
So our original study where we saw the decreased sensation in the genital area in women with sexual dysfunction made us say, well, if the nerves seem to be involved, perhaps, overstimulating those nerves or enhancing stimulation of those nerves could improve sexual function. And there was a gentleman who made a device called the arousalator. And when we spoke to them, it seemed like their device was different than some of the other devices on the market because there's some concern about overstimulation and causing the nerves to stop functioning. And their device was designed actually by a gentleman who designed one of the first electric toothbrushes using a model and a motor that actually allowed increased sensation without dampening the sensation or overstimulating. Yeah. And when they approached us with this idea, we said, well, if you let us, we'd like to design a study just to prove that what you're saying will improve our patients. And they gave us the ability to do that.
There was a lot of common sense indication that would work, but there really hadn't been any scientific research on it, I guess.
Exactly. And there's a lot of empirical evidence. Women say, oh, yes, I use these devices and they work, but it hadn't been compared, and no one really knew if they truly do work.
Yeah.
And so
what was your hope
in
launching your study? I guess basically to improve that kind of a device would work then.
I think it was twofold. Number one, just trying to identify a treatment option for women who have these problems. Yeah. And the second one is there's a lot of stigmatization behind the use of stimulation devices for women. They're sold in sex shops. People, don't talk about using them. It's true. And we watch Viagra. They're commercials on male sexual dysfunction products now. Yeah. And so knowing that, we thought if we can study it and show it truly works and has some kind of biological meaning behind it. So what we showed with the device is that it actually improves nerve function. That sensation in the genital area improved in the women who used it. So we didn't just show that it worked to subjectively improve sexual dysfunction or even objectively, but we showed that it alters the nerve function. The nerves were more sensitive after using the device. Yeah. And that was really our goal, to show that there's maybe some biological plausibility and hopefully reduce the stigma behind using things that may treat women with sexual dysfunction.
Well, please tell us a bit about the study parameters. How many participants, the length of your study, the age range, and how are the participants selected for this study?
So we selected women who had not undergone menopause, and it was really women who reported that they had sexual dysfunction most of the time. It's hard to study people who say, well, sometimes this, sometimes that. So we took people who reported having the problem most of the time, and meaning that they rarely or never got orgasm, or they never or rarely got aroused. And we used specifically arousal and orgasm because those seem to be tracked. If you have arousal, it's a physiological response that you have, and with orgasm, it's the same. And so we felt like we could monitor that a little bit better. Obviously, with desire, it might be that you had a bad night, you had a hard day, you just in a bad mood. So we wanted to use two things that didn't seem to relate to that. Yeah. Basically, we gave them questionnaires, and they used these validated questionnaires and answered them, and we used the cutoff scores to define whether or not they had sexual dysfunction or not. So if they did not meet the appropriate cutoff, they were excluded from the study. So we actually had over 200 people who called in and wanted to participate in the study, and of those, about 65 met the criteria to participate, but after filling out the questionnaires and being evaluated, only about 50 of the women actually qualified for the study and showed that they did have sexual dysfunction based on the validated questionnaires. And so we evaluated their nerve function at baseline.
Yeah.
We gave them the arousalator, and we asked them to start using the arousalator. And we did not mandate how often they used it or how they used it. They could use it as foreplay. They could use it instead of intercourse. They could use it however they wanted, because the idea was if you falsely make people do something they wouldn't routinely do, then is your study generalizable to everyone else? And we didn't think it would be.
Well, I thought I saw somewhere that it said the age range was 19 to 64, and how could there be a premenopausal woman at 64? I guess
you're right. Actually, when we originally started the study, the goal was to go premenopausal, and we started to realize that some of the people who were calling were not, but they also had some of the conditions.
I see.
And what we also noticed is, and I think this was really important to us, because a lot of people, I think, have in their mind that women with sexual dysfunction meet a certain prototype. They must be this, they must be that. We found that a lot of our patients were married. A lot of them were in long-term, stable relationships. A lot of them had had sexual dysfunction for many, many years, and it was both bothersome not only to them but to their partners, who had a lot of guilt because they felt like, what is it they were doing wrong because they could not satisfy their wife or their partner. And so for us, that was a learning experience for us. And it was great to hear, because we recognized that, in fact, this idea of it being 50% is probably accurate, because it really does affect all comers. All women are at risk for having sexual dysfunction.
Yeah, so participants use this, I guess you call it a genital vibratory stimulation device, or GVSD, and that's what this arousalator, can't pronounce it.
Arousalator, yes.
Arousalator, that's what that is, I guess. And you say that women use this over, was it a period of 3 months, and you prefer they do it like once a week, although you said you sort of left it open to...
We left it open. We required them to use it at least twice a week. We didn't care how they used it, in what frame. As I mentioned, it could be foreplay, it could be not.
Nice.
But they used it for, we requested that they use it at least twice a week, because if you don't use it, we felt like if you didn't use it enough, do you really know if it works? And if you use it, once a month for 3 months, can you really give us valid information about it? And we evaluated them at 1 month and at 3 months. And we looked at their nerve function, and using these validated questionnaires, we asked them again about their sexual function.
I see.
And at both 1 and 3 months, their sexual function improved. But interestingly, their nerve function also improved. They had increased sensation in the genital region. And for us, that was sort of a new finding. It hadn't been seen before in any treatment for sexual dysfunction, and so it also gave us a plausible reason why these women might experience sexual dysfunction and might have improvement after certain therapies.
What fascinated me is, apparently, according to what I was reading from your study, possible long-term benefits. Some women had those even after they quit discontinuing the vibratory, or that word I can't pronounce, arousalator.
That was actually one of the things we were most excited about, because the idea that perhaps we're just waking these nerves up that, hadn't been working before, and the idea that if you can just wake them up and continue to have them work may be a great option for many women, because it means that you're not reliant on something for long term. And then obviously we need more studies to determine if that's true over time, and we obviously need money for those things. If there's any listeners out there who want to donate money for studies, we're out here to take that money to do that.
Well, beyond enjoyment of intercourse or the desire to get pregnant, are there positive health benefits to women from having sex, not all the time, but regularly? What are some of these benefits, the overall health benefits from that?
So I think rather than look at it as the benefits to having sex, it's the benefits to not having sexual dysfunction.
Oh, I see.
So if someone obviously has a dysfunction, it means that the issue is bothering them. It's burdensome to their life. So if you're trying to do something and you're not able to succeed at it, it's going to have a negative impact on your overall quality of life.
That's a very good point. That that doesn't mean you have to want to have sex, but if you do and can't, it's a far different
Absolutely.
story.
Absolutely. And I think that's where that should be emphasized, that these are women, and as I mentioned before, many of them were in long-term stable relationships. So imagine that burden on you when you're in that relationship and you can't understand why that aspect of your life isn't working. And so I think that when you look at quality of life, you look at depression and things like that, those are some of the concerning things that may be associated with sexual dysfunction for some women.
Well, one thing that I found fascinating, you pointed out that reaching an orgasm often leads to even greater benefits due to release of feel-good hormones, which help you relax and gain a feeling of warmth and closeness, as well as relief of pain and depression. And I think there's a lot of truth to that.
And more than us sort of saying these things, there's data out there to suggest that these things are true. I think that the more we study women with sexual dysfunction, the more information we're going to learn, and the more we come up with treatment options that work for these women, the more we'll find out. If we can treat them, we can go back and find out the differences, right? Now with limited treatments available, we only know they're experiencing these things, and they don't even know for sure that they're associated with sexual dysfunction. Yeah. You don't know that association's there until they get better, and then that association's gone. And I think that the more we put time and resources into female sexual dysfunction like we do male sexual dysfunction, the more likely we are to improve quality of life for women.
That's such a good point. Well, let's say a listener would like to try out the Arousalator. Is it possible to purchase the device without a prescription? And where do you go to obtain one?
So the Arousalator is actually sold online by the device manufacturers. We actually, when we did this study, I mentioned that we wanted to use their device for the study, but we ourselves we are not makers of the device. We don't have any financial gains to the device, but the device is definitely available online, and it can be purchased online from they have a website. It's www.arousalator.com, and you had questions about how it's pronounced, how it's spelled. It's probably just as difficult. It's EROSCILLATOR. So, and you can go on there and see the device itself. Our study information is available also online.
Well, that sounds like a great way to do it. So you wouldn't have to have a doctor's prescription or anything. It's
right.
Like you mentioned, it's kind of like the toothbrush,
right?
The electronic toothbrush or whatever.
And I think it's really important, though, that people don't just go online and buy it. I am a big fan of making sure that they talk about these issues and bring it up to someone. It can be a psychologist, it can be their primary care provider, because I find that many times there's multiple things that may be contributing to normal sexual function, and if they go and get it and those other things are still contributing, they may not get better.
Yeah,
so that it should be a comprehensive approach to improving their sexual function.
Yeah, and then you only feel worse if you got that and they didn't feel better after that. But well, how would you suggest a woman approach her doctor about a personal sexual dysfunction? What if she feels like it's simply too embarrassing? How do you overcome that?
You mentioned the 1 in 4 women with urogynecology. A lot of people tell me it's embarrassing when they're peeing in their pants or when they're pooping in their pants. You know, at the end of the day, at some point you have to take control of your own life, and you have to make sure you have a good relationship with the person you're working with. When someone has a primary care provider that they're comfortable talking to, they can easily approach that person and bring up these things. And if they find that they're not comfortable saying it, it might be time to find a new primary care provider, because they should feel like if they tell their provider that they're having any kind of issue, if it's incontinence, if it's sexual dysfunction, that provider is going to listen to them and provide them with some kind of, even if it's a referral, if the provider says, I don't deal with this, but let me refer you to someone, that's still some sort of positive response to them bringing up an issue. And I feel like it should be just as comfortable as telling them that they're having chest pain or that they're, having pain in their left toe. To me, they're the same thing.
If you don't feel comfortable talking to your doctor, you're a teammate, not, it's got to be a team effort. And if you can't really share everything that's important with that physician, you probably are going to the wrong physician.
Absolutely.
This is a program about middle age, so I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up menopause. and you mentioned that your study did include some older women. Did your study uncover sexual dysfunction that relates directly to menopause, and are there symptoms similar to those found in younger women? And does this accelerator, I can't.
Right.
So that for older women, or is it just basically for younger women?
So I absolutely would say absolutely not just for older women. For younger women. Yeah. I think that our goal is to identify treatments that are available for all women. Importantly, though, in older women, or not older, but women in menopause, I think young and old are sort of dated terms at this point.
Yes, they are.
Right? And so, but in women who have undergone menopause, in some cases they do have vaginal dryness that may go along with menopause and having the low estrogen. So in some of those women, vaginal lubricants and other things may be needed to help enhance that response. And so, again, this is where talking to your provider, understanding your pelvic anatomy, understanding sort of what may be contributing to your symptoms is very, very important. And I really do encourage women not only to go, yes, feel free to purchase this device if you have arousal, orgasmic dysfunction. It did also improve in women with pain, that they actually improved their pain. But I think it is important also to have that relationship with that provider and make sure that they understand what's going on, so that you understand your body and what's going on, and make sure that you are a good candidate for the improvement with the device.
Yeah, you also mentioned that sometimes childbirth can affect the sexual dysfunction, and do women that suffer underlying nerve damage as a result of childhood, can that be reversed through your treatment methods?
So we know that that nerve decreased sensation, which is obviously regulated by nerves, is improved with the device. That was one of the things that we found with this device, and that's what made us so happy, because, again, it gave us some kind of biological reason why the device might cause improvement. We don't know for sure the extent of the damage, and if it gets to a point where there is a point of no return, or if it's only if it's mild damage. We didn't study all of those things, but we did take all comers, and so we can argue that some of them may have had traumatic births and they still responded. So again, it made us very happy to see the positive response that we got in the sensation as well.
Well, that's great. Where would you suggest our listeners go to learn more? Do you have a website or a place they should go to learn more about you, or to contact you, or where get additional information? Where should they go for that?
Absolutely. I'm, as I mentioned before, a urogynecologist at the University of Colorado, and we do have a website. It's called coloradowomenhealth.com/urogynecology. That's also a big word, spelled UROGYNECOLOGY.
Okay, so that's Colorado Women's Health /urogynecology.
Urogynecology.
Or uro.
URO, yes, urogynecology.
Okay, well, that sounds great. And to conclude, thank you so much, Dr. Guest, for this vital information that can be so empowering to our female listeners. And to sum up her conclusions, female sexual dysfunction is far more common than most folks realize, but very few of us want to talk about it. And the good news, Dr. Marsha Guest's research offers scientific evidence that help is on the way, and it may not require extensive, costly medicine or treatment. And experts still don't know the precise cause, as she points out, but there is that inexpensive, non-invasive solution available to address the physical aspects of sexual dysfunction. And once again, that device is
the arousalator.
You're right. One of these days I'll be able to pronounce the arousalator. And as Dr. Guest has revealed, improved sexual activity can lead to a better overall health, improve your marriage or life partnership, and help restore joy at middle age, as we all know. And thank you so much, Dr. Marsha Guest, for sharing this invaluable information.
Thank you very much for inviting me today. I really appreciate it.